I get asked a lot about the best preamp to use for acoustic guitar. I wrote a blog about a while ago on the website Anatomy of Tone, and dug into it, and I thought it would just be good to just talk about it in a video and go over some of the concepts I talked about in the article and maybe give a few more perspectives. So getting a great acoustic guitar sound live is really a challenging experience. It's very unnatural the way that I would say, amplify the acoustic guitar, because we often put a transducer underneath the bridge, and we use that to capture the majority of the sound of the guitar, as opposed to a microphone, because a microphone on a lot of loud stages will create feedback, right, and have bleed. So if you're playing in a loud rock band, other instruments will start to sneak into that microphone. So that's often undesirable. So they use a piezo and under the saddle pickups to just get the vibrations and direct from the bridge. You don't get a lot of the tone of the guitar that way, and so the tone suffers a bit for, I'd say, the benefit of not having feedback or bleed issues, which sometimes you have to do because of the circumstances that you're in. Now, they do make some pickups that have built-in microphones in them, right? And these microphones allow you to get more of a natural sound like guitar. Now, it's still not the same as using a large diaphragm condenser or ribbon microphone out in front of the guitar, but it sounds way better than just the piezo pickup. Some systems allow you to blend the two together so you can get the direct sound of the under the saddle pickup, but blend in some of the microphone, and that can help. But again, that is depending on the environment you're in, how loud the monitors are, how loud the band is around you. I still prefer a mic'd acoustic guitar sound, so whenever I can, I try to use the microphone option, and I really like the LR Bags systems. I find that even their piezo and their blending systems, they just tend to sound the best to my ears, and they're really wonderful. We have them on a couple of guitars, and they are, to my ears, sounding the best. So and there are situations where I have to change the blend of it too, so it's not like a set it and forget it situations. And this is where monitors can become problematic on stage sometimes, depending on how much volume you're pumping through the monitors. Okay, so the first step is figuring out like your situation that you're dealing with when it comes to why you need an acoustic guitar preamp DI and what kind of setting you're playing in. Now, once we get that figured out with the guitar, we can start to talk about different preamps, right? And so there are quite a few on the market. I'm going to first start talking about the Radial DI, which is in my article on anatomyoftone.com. By the way, if you're liking this video, if you hit the subscribe button, the like button, and just leave me comments if you have any questions and want to discuss this further. So the Radial DI is a really no-frills DI that actually sounds really great. And there's no EQ, no bypass, no tuner. There's nothing on this. You just plug straight into it. And this is a really great sounding DI. I use this a lot for bass and synths and occasionally for acoustic guitar. I generally prefer a acoustic DI that has a bypass switch on it. Sometimes I'm switching guitars in between songs and I need to have a mute switch. Other times, you want to bypass your signal before you get on and off stage. So I generally prefer to have a little more control, but if you don't, this is a really wonderful sounding DI. There are some cheap options that give you a little bit more of an option. This is a fairly inexpensive Modtone Acoustic Line acoustic preamp, and it sounds actually pretty decent. It gives you some effects on it, and it's really not bad for the amount of money you're paying for it. So this is a pretty good like entry-level acoustic DI. I guess the discussion needs to come up about like what makes them so different from one another. Why, as we're going to talk about the Grace Audio and the Fishman and the LR Bags in a bit, but what makes them so different than, say, the Modtone? And there's a lack of dimension sometimes that the cheaper preamps have. And you have to get pretty expensive in order to get almost like this more rounder 3D dimension, right? And then we're going to talk about with the Grace preamps, but below that you start losing some dimension and also some body. And so the Modtone is really great for what it is. It doesn't have the body, I would say, as some of the other preamps, or the same amount of control, but there's some very basic controls for EQ and stuff on it, and it really does a pretty decent job if you don't want to carry around a lot of expensive gear, or you can't afford expensive gear. It gives you some really wonderful features on it. Now, the LR Bag's Venue DI, and of course, you can go to the website and you could read a lot more about what I wrote here. I also wrote an article for Premier Guitar Magazine on a lot of different acoustic guitar pickups. So between those two articles, you should find a lot of information to assist you. Now, the Modtone and the LR bags are both going to give us XLR outputs, which is great from just sending the signal straight to the board. You don't need another DI box or anything. It just will deliver your stuff right to the board. Fantastic, right? Now, the LR bags is definitely a step up from the Modtone. It is a bit more expensive. We're talking about like $300 like street price here. It has a tuner on it, and it has more options when it comes to the EQ. Okay, and it has, does this one have a boost knob on it? It does have yes, a boost knob. So some of these tuners or switch have the option to have a boost feature, which is helpful if you're playing in a small venue and you don't have a sound person and you need to boost for solos. You can always leave a little headroom and then just preset it and then be able to boost if you need to get above other musicians to be able to solo in acoustic setting. This is very useful when you don't have a sound person, as is the onboard EQ, right? So the situation where the EQ comes in handy is when you don't have somebody running the sound up front, right? And you are running your own sound. You hear the sound on stage coming from the mains, and you can adjust your guitar tone from there. A lot of people don't know how to use the EQ on these, and they can get into trouble because if you're working with a sound person, and let's say they're sending you a monitor feed, if you're adjusting your EQ based on the monitor feed, that could present problems to the front of the house, because often the sound of the monitors and the sound of the main speakers are considerably different. So the changes that you're making to fix the sound in the monitors could actually be making it much more difficult for the front of house. So I recommend not making changes and leaving all the knobs flat. If you're dealing with a sound person, make sure they're flat and they're not boost or cut. And then as they're setting your sound, if you're unhappy with something, step out front, listen to it, and then you can make some subtle changes yourself and then go back out in front and check. If you need changes to the sound in the monitor, ask them to make it. That's going to be a much more productive way to deal with it, rather than you messing with the sound and sending it to them, and then they have to tweak, and it becomes this circular like effect where you never get to a good place because you're each fighting each other. So I really like this preamp a lot. I thought this is one of the better ones I've tried. One of the big variances on a lot of these DIs, honestly, are the tuners and how people react to the way that the tuners look and work. And it's funny how much that plays into this, because people definitely want to be comfortable and feel like they could see the tuner. This is a very visible tuner, which was really good and helpful on stage. It's great. It's a little bright as a preamp. It's hard to get rid of that plasticky sound when you're just using the under saddle pickup. So it emphasizes that maybe a little bit, but honestly, it's great, and it has an effects loop in it. So if you want to tie in a compressor or a delay or reverb, you can use the effects loop to tie right into it. And you could run it on battery, which is great, but it'll also take phantom power. So it has a lot of options on it. Now the Fishman Platinum Pro EQ DI, again, you're going to see this has a lot of similar features as the LR bags, right? They're very much competing products, and let's see what the price point is on here. Like, they're even the same price, right? DI out, can run on battery or phantom, or actually this one also has the option for to use a 9-volt DC power supply with it. Oh, they both do actually, right? 9-volt DC, okay, great. So they both have that option. You could run them with like a pedal power supply. This one also has a boost control on it. Now the tuner isn't as easy to see, but it's like a VU needle style, which some people prefer because it's a little bit more than what they're used to with traditional tuners. I did find it a little harder to see on some festival stages. The LR bags is a little easier to see. The tone on this one maybe was a slightly warmer than I feel like the LR bags, right? We're splitting hairs here, and but just a subtle difference in the EQ. They're both great acoustic guitar preamps. This one also has a built-in compressor, which is helpful, but I will say the one thing to be mindful of is make sure that you know if the compression is on. First of all, I've seen a lot of artists who buy any of these preamps. They get them and they just take them out of the bag and they set them up on stage, and they don't realize that the EQs or filters are boosted or cut, or the compression is on too high. Or make sure that you write down like the normalized settings, and even you can mark them on there. Use some painter's tape or artist tape, masking tape, and mark the settings so that you know, or just put a reminder to yourself to make sure that you check the settings before you plug in and send the sound to the sound person, because the first sound that you send to the sound person is going to be a bit shocking to them. So if they hear something that's really messed up, they're going to enter panic mode and try to troubleshoot and fix it. And all along, it could be you sending a signal that is more augmented than meant to be. So when you're plugging into the front of the house, or even your own PA, if you're running your own sound, it's always best to just start with the most basic setting, right? Start flat and then adjust as you need to. Don't just plug into a preset compression and EQ setting and think it's going to be right for each instance, right? So start off clean. Boost feature, I think I mentioned, is on this as well, and yeah, I think it's a really, really nice preamp, and used it on a variety of sources, including upright bass, and it's really a high quality, I feel like, reliable unit. The LR bags, the Fishman, both have been in use for me for many years now, and super reliable. Now, we're going to start to take a jump up here. So we started with the Modtone, which was affordable as the Radial, and we went to the Fishman and the LR bags. Now we're going to start talking about higher end audio. Not that the LR bags or the Fishman aren't high quality, but we start getting into studio quality preamps with the Grace Designs Alix, right? And this is really a premium DI, and I felt there was a considerable difference between the sound of this DI and the other ones. There was just no comparison, right? Now it's expensive. Let's see what the price is here in my blog. Yeah, it's $625. At least that was the price a couple of years ago. I haven't checked to see what it is right now. So it's an expensive DI, and it doesn't come with some of the features that the other DIs do, such as it doesn't have a built-in tuner. It doesn't have a built-in compressor. Right? But what it does better. And I preferred to use my own tuner and compressor tied into this rather than the built-in effects on and tuner on the other ones. Now, it doesn't mean I was unhappy using the Platinum, but for doing a lot of theaters and festivals and such, I found that the Grace it really added more dimension to my guitar tone. It felt rounder, it felt more 3D. It really helped combat some of that harshness and flatness that happens from the under the saddle pickups, right? I was using a Martin HD28 a lot on tour, and that just had a Fishman piezo underneath the bridge. I wasn't using the microphone a lot in this tour. Sometimes we were either doing fully acoustic around a condenser mic and just none of us plugged in, or when I was plugging in, I was using the Alix because just the sound quality was elevated. In fact, often, even if we were all huddled around a microphone, I would still be tied into the Alix just in case for solos. They would need to bump me, and it blended really well with the microphone. Actually, it was a wonderful support. The preamps, it's like plugging into a real high-end recording studio preamp. Grace has been around a long time, and they're known for making very lovely, clean preamps. And I record a lot. I'm a recording engineer as well, and I'm really, really sensitive to high-end preamps, API, Neve, Pendulum, Grace. I just hear what that level of preamp can add to your signal, and this really, really does that. And also, I think gives you the most high-end and options when it comes to using a DI, right? We've got ground lifts on it, and we've got, of course, the DI out, we've got effects loops, we've got a tuner out. So they do set you up to be able to tie all of that stuff into your signal chain. It comes with just a traditional IEC cable here that you could plug in, which I actually really liked. You didn't have to buy an additional wall wart or anything. It just was simple to just have the three-prong plug and plug it in. It's got a phase switch. Let's look at some of the features on here. You're going to find on some other preamps that you're going to see that there are going to be some of the same options, right? You're going to have a high pass filter to prevent some of the low end from being muddy and creating feedback, right? You're going to have high and low boost, and often you'll have some sort of mid-range control. I really liked that this allowed me to have not only alternate volumes to send to the house and to an amplifier if I was using an onstage amp like a Fishman loud box or something like that for monitoring, which sometimes was the case, or any other kind of amp for that matter. It really gave me the flexibility to adjust for those circumstances. Also, I felt like the parametric EQ on it was really, really well voiced, and I was able to make a lot of really refined adjustments, and often I didn't have to adjust much. And I would sometimes adjust the sound going to the monitor on festival stages, because I knew that I was making such subtle changes, it really wasn't going to affect the monitor person that much, right? So I'm going against my rule here, but the Alix gave me such refined control over it that I could make such subtle adjustments. And I do mean subtle, right? You don't want to make drastic changes if you are sending to the front of house. Sometimes they would ask me to make the changes, and they would say, can you give me less gain, more gain? Can you just adjust a little bit of the low end? And I would have a conversation with the front of house as I was getting sound to, to just get a proper sound going. It was like teamwork between us. But I found front of house sound person really, really loved this preamp when I used it. And often it just sounded so good. I didn't have to do much, Sometimes the low end is a little boomy, so that's an issue depending on some stages that you're on. And sometimes I play with the mid range was a common adjustment that I would play with if it was feeling too plasticky. I was able to pull a little bit of that out, which is often the circumstances with an under the bridge pickup. There are additional features with dip switches on here that can allow you to change some of the settings on it, and whether it's voiced for acoustic guitar or upright bass. A lot of upright bass players use this as well. So I would say this is like the top tier of acoustic guitar preamps that you can buy. If you're looking for, well, a preamp that really doesn't get any better for acoustic guitar, this is what you should head for. Now, it doesn't mean that you can't get great sounds with the other ones. I want to discuss what pedals I use in combination with the Grace Audio on tour. So I use this tuner from Sonic Research called what is it actually? I never remember the model number. ST300 is the turbo tuner. It's just the best tuner. You don't need any other tuner. Get used to reading the strobe meter on this. It just doesn't get any better than this tuner. They do not make a headstock tuner. They only make these small tuners, and I have this barefoot button on top to make it easier to turn the pedals, all my pedals, on and off. So big fan of barefoot buttons, so check them out. They're based in Hawaii, and they're just wonderful. But here's the strobo tuner. What's unique about it is that it is actually an analog strobe tuner. It looks like a digital LED display on here, but it actually is an analog strobe tuner, so it never gets stumped on what pitches you're playing. It doesn't get confused, right? It'll always exactly know what pitch your guitar string is at. A lot of other tuners sometimes have a moment where they seem to be a little confused, right? It also is very well lit. So no matter what stage I'm on, from an outdoor stage, I can see it quite well, and that's wonderful, as that was an issue. Sometimes I'd be on playing a festival stage in the daytime and I couldn't see the tuner, so having a well-lit tuner was also very important to me. The fact that I could get both of these in one tuner was really important, right? Here's the turbo tuner on one of my touring pedal boards, and you see it, and I use it in my acoustic pedal boards as well. It just doesn't really get any better than this, and it's the only tuner I use. I have multiples of them, and I use them on different pedal boards. Now, compressors. I really love this Effectrode PC2A for acoustic guitar. I don't compress a lot, right? I'm only compressing a little just to enhance the resonance of the acoustic guitar. The acoustic guitar tends to, especially with an under the saddle pickup, be so transient oriented and lack sustain and almost be too dynamic. So I use the Effectrode PC2A, which is basically like an LA2A style compressor. It's very easy. It's peak reduction and gain on it. Very simple. I don't use much peak reduction. It's just kicking in just a little. It might even be like a setting like you saw come up there, maybe even a little less peak reduction than that. It's just evening out. It's adding some nice warm mid-range back into my signal. The highs get a little silkier when I use it. It controls some of the dynamics and contains some of the plasticiness of the guitar. So this is one of my favorite compressor for the acoustic guitar, because it's simple, and if you need more control, they make Effectrode makes a compressor that also has attack and release on it. This is actually a tube compressor. Let me see if I can go find the one that is the has more control on it. Here it is, the LA1A. This is also from Effectrode, and it gives us more options on it as far as like attack and knee, and has a boost option as well. We don't need the boost of the acoustic guitar because we have the boost on the Grace or the other preamps that you have. But this is my go-to, or at least the PC2A is my go-to when it comes to using the Grace audio design. So I do have a small pedal board that is designed for acoustic guitar in more of these settings where the sound is going to be really important, right? So there's plenty of settings where the sound isn't as important. Events, corporate gigs and bar gigs, such as that. But there are gigs if you're doing showcases and playing your own music, and people are being quiet and really paying attention to the variances in sound, and sound is an expression in those environments, and you can change the impression of the music by the way the sound sounds. The way the sound sounds, yes, by the way the sound sounds. Then using something more high-end and the pedal chain, like which I showed with the Effectrode and the turbo tuner, can help elevate your tone, and it's in those circumstances that I use the Alix, right? There's a lot of other circumstances where the Fishman and the LR bags, with them being more self-contained and are easier for some gigs that I've been asked to do. Well, there you have it. There are other preamps on the market, of course. I have tested a lot of them, and these were the ones that I like the tone the best, right? Doesn't mean that other ones aren't usable, but from my taste in tone, these were the, well, I guess these were, how many were there? Were 4 here that are 5 that are in my regular rotation, and I feel offer the best reliability, professional sound. So yeah, so if you have any questions or any comments, please leave them and like the channel, and more to come in the future.